the worst decisions I've made in life are ones that I've made out of fear. When I'm like, oh, I'm afraid if I quit this job to do this new thing, what if I can't get another job like the one I had at Google? What if this new company, Galactic Fed, fails and my friends make fun of me as they did like every day when I said I was quitting that job to start something new? Basically, this is a small depiction I wrote that says, my dream is to invent things. And this is like one of my most prized possessions in the world. And it's nice to be able to look back and be like, wow, like I've always been that guy, that little kid who wanted to do his own thing, to create, to invent, and to build new things. I worked at Google, Proctor Gamble, my first company. I stayed up like all night, multiple months coding this thing. I didn't know how to code. I taught myself. It was a terribly run company, honestly. I had no idea what I was doing. But that really ignited this love in me for doing my own things, building new things. I was living out of my suitcase for 6 years, traveling every 6 or 7 days on average. I had 2 pairs of shoes, 1 pair of pants, and I was traveling around the world as I built my company, Galactic Fed. And I think that this sort of traditional paradigm that we've had of 2.5 kids in the suburb, commuting into work, sitting in an office for 8 hours a day, spending more time with your colleagues than you do with your spouse, is something that our generation needs to bust. And we need to build something better for us.
Welcome to Cherie's Corner, a podcast where we dive into the topic of careers and hear from my friends and guests who are killing it in the business world, so we can learn from their lessons, their wisdoms, and their mistakes. I'm your host, Cherie, and currently I'm a business school student at Stanford University. Previously, I had experience working in tech and venture capital. In this episode, I speak with my Stanford classmate, Zach Boyette. Zach embodies what I see as entrepreneurial spirit, fueled by innovation, independence, and a relentless drive to create. He started his career at companies like Google and Proctor Gamble, and has made the daring leap to found his own company, Galactic Fed. Beyond his professional endeavors, Zach embodies the modern nomad, having traveled the world while pushing for a flexible remote lifestyle that challenges existing traditional work paradigms. And right now, he's currently writing a book that highlights all the learnings that he's gathered over the last several years. Zach has such an interesting life story, and I am so excited to share it with you. Let's dive in. Thank you, Zach, for coming on to Cherie's Corner. We're so happy to have you here.
I'm happy to be here today.
And before we get started, I give the opportunity for my guests to ask me any questions that they want. Hardball, softball, ask away.
Cherie, we both were selected to be 2 of the 9 people for TedX Stanford this year, which I did not expect to get, but really happy to be here. I expected you to get it for sure, though. Tell me what your TEDx talk will be about.
So my TEDx will be in the spring, and the headline is Anyone Can Be an Influencer. I'll be talking about my experiences as a creator and how basically anyone can put out content in the world, especially educational content, and have it deliver value and help people anywhere. This is especially important to me because over the last couple of years, as I've created content, I've really seen how just like my personal voice can touch people, empower them, and uplift them and educate them and deliver information that they wouldn't have otherwise known about. And so I think it's a really important theme in the future as we see how social media apps that are used for entertainment traditionally are now being used for learning and education.
That sounds amazing. I'm excited to be in the front row. You're going to kill it. Second question, less softball. What are you looking for out of a romantic life partner? And they may be listening right now, so no pressure.
No pressure at all. I think overall, top line things in a romantic partner or a life partner, something that I've realized is that I have a balancing act. On one end, I like to think that I'm like a professional, boss woman in the workplace and creating and having impact, very professional. But then on the other side, you know me as a classmate friend, like super goofy and silly, and like we don't take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah.
And so that's how I view life, and I love having that balance. So when I think about a life partner, I would also prioritize someone who can like laugh at themselves and not take themselves too seriously, have a goofy side, and honestly make me laugh. I just want to laugh.
She just wants to laugh.
I just want to laugh.
Listen, take notes.
That's one of the first things, like not take themselves too seriously. Life is for living. Life is, you know, we can get stuff done, but you can also be a whole, complete human being and be silly.
I love that. That's a great answer. Yeah.
And then there's more. There's
more.
Well, wait, there's more. I would also say prioritizing health is really important to me. In a partner, they say that you are the average of the 5 people that you are closest to. And I've like seriously felt that with the people that are in my life. And so if I'm with someone who is a couch potato, I can feel myself becoming more of a couch potato.
Totally.
So, and like health is really important to me, and it's something that I would hope that my partner would prioritize, because I think it would make me a healthy person as well. And the last one, I think prioritizing family is really important. Family over everything is something that I say all the time. Like, work doesn't matter, school doesn't matter, career doesn't matter. If my health and my family are not in a good place, I will not be in a good place emotionally, mentally. And so I prioritize family a lot, seeing my family, making sure that they're okay in every sense of that word. So prioritizing family is important for me, so I'd want to see that in a potential spouse as well.
I love that. That makes sense, especially as your spouse will become your family. So
right.
Prioritizing you would be a priority.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about these 3?
I think those are great. Yeah. What is it? Health, funny, and family. That's about all you got. Yeah.
Funny, health, family.
Funny, health, family. Yeah. I mean, that encapsulates having a good time, you know, sticking around and being able to do things that you enjoy together, and prioritizing each other and your family. I agree.
Well, so you're dating one of my best friends. My best friend is your best friend.
Yeah.
My best friend is your girlfriend.
Yes.
In terms of like life partner or things that you prioritize, what are some things that come up for you?
So all the 3 you mentioned for sure. And it's kind of one of those things when you start dating somebody, you learn more about what's important to you. So what I've learned through KG is we just are very similar. We have very similar interests. We're both from the South in the US. We both like to travel. We're both interested in doing the digital nomad lifestyle. We both, you know, are interested in having family one day. We just want to work hard and build and do cool stuff, but also enjoy life, you know, not needing to, you know, build monuments to glory, but more building monuments to, you know, doing good in the world and having a good life and giving back, I think is what we care about a lot together.
I love that.
Yeah.
And if you're watching this podcast episode, go to see more, and you can also watch my conversation with KG from season 2.
Tall blonde girl, olive jacket. Last question for you, a bit easier, maybe. 7 days from now, you find out that there will be an apocalypse. Pick your apocalypse, maybe zombie apocalypse. You have 7 days to prep, $1 million budget. What do you do, and who do you bring with you?
$1 million budget.
Yes.
I like that you said zombie apocalypse, because that really narrows down what I need to be doing.
Yes.
I don't know if I would make it through a zombie apocalypse. I'm going to be honest. Give me any, like, a different type of apocalypse. I might have, you know, a chance.
Anyone can meet an influencer during the apocalypse.
That's true. Like, day in the life of a zombie apocalypse. I don't think I would make it through a zombie apocalypse. I would sure as hell try.
I was about to say, I like how you've given up before you've even spent the budget. At least give the budget to me at this point.
You know what? That's a good point. Like, it's not even about the budget. It's about, like, it's not like willingness to try.
Yeah.
Or like amount of money. Like, I would sure as hell use every single dollar to like give it my all.
Yeah.
But when I think about like what's needed, like hand-to-hand combat with a zombie, I've watched too many zombie movies. Those things run. Have you seen Train to Busan?
No.
Oh, you gotta watch it. It's a Korean like horror movie about zombie apocalypse.
Korean zombie movies always have fast zombies.
Like, why are they sprinting?
I'm thinking like slow zombies, so you have that going for you at least.
Like Walking Dead.
Yeah, Walking Dead zombies.
The AMC's Walking Dead.
Low budget.
Yeah, I don't know. The sprinting zombies, like...
The zombies that did not prioritize health when they were alive.
That's true. What would I do with $1 million? Wow, I would build a bunker.
Yeah, fair.
You know I would.
Yeah.
There would be the food, there would be the protection and the gear. And then I'd also want to find people to hunker down with.
Yeah.
It's like, depends on the bunker. Do we even get daylight? Like, we're going to be spending a lot of time with each other.
Yeah.
I'd also bring poker, board games, things
important.
that we're going to need to do to pass the time.
Books. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Our case studies
Yes.
that we need to be reading.
None of that. We don't read that anyway.
Honestly, I think the people are the most important.
Yeah.
Optimizing for like good attitude in a zombie apocalypse.
Yes.
You can't be a downer. Like,
it's very true.
The world is already coming to an end. So, and honestly, I think you and KG would be in there. I don't know if I'd be in your top, and I'm not even gonna ask.
You could be in our top. Yeah.
But I think you two would be in my top because you guys have like a drive outside of zombie apocalypse. But like you guys like
drive to survive, baby.
Drive to survive and super scrappy, figure things out, and a good attitude. It's not saying that like camping is like a zombie apocalypse, but like that's kind of the image I have in mind.
Yeah.
Like when the going gets tough, what are you gonna do?
Totally.
And I'll totally be there to like also bring that as well. But hand-to-hand combat, I think I'm a goner.
That's okay. Yeah. Hopefully it won't come to that. We just need a good attitude from you.
Could you please introduce yourself and tell our audience a little bit more about your background, where you grew up, and how you grew up?
Yes. Hi, y'all. I am Zach. I grew up on Signal Mountain, Tennessee, near Chattanooga, one of the few Southern people at the GSB right now. I was always really interested in traveling a lot, but I didn't get to do that much. I was actually in a wheelchair when I was young for at least a year after I drove a car off of a cliff and jumped out, breaking my left arm, which I write with, and my right leg. Long story, but I sat in the library all day and I just read a bunch of books like Chronicles of Narnia and Magic Tree House, and I dreamed of traveling the world, but we didn't really get to do that much. I actually didn't travel or fly on a plane until I was 19 years old. But yeah, I grew up in Tennessee. I went to Vanderbilt University for undergrad. I worked at Google, Proctor Gamble, and some other larger companies like that. I started my first company in college. I'm an entrepreneur now. My first company, I stayed up like all night, multiple months coding this thing. I didn't know how to code. I taught myself. It was a terribly run company, honestly. I had no idea what I was doing. It was a personal website builder. But that really ignited this love in me for doing my own things, building new things. And eventually I learned about the digital nomad lifestyle, remote work. This was back in 2016 when it was a bit new. I quit Google and worked at a tech startup that was a remote company at the time, and eventually quit and started the company that I run right now called Galactic Fed. We're a marketing business services company, a marketing agency. We have 170 employees in 25 countries around the world, fully remote, of course. So yeah, I was living out of my suitcase for 6 years, traveling every 6 or 7 days on average. I had 2 pairs of shoes, 1 pair of pants, and I was traveling around the world as I built my company, Galactic Fed. And it was a really fun lifestyle. And now, in addition to doing the MBA and continuing to run this company, I'm writing a book about remote work and digital nomad stuff, which has been fun. I've always wanted to be an author as well. So,
what prompted you to write a book now?
So I started writing this book the summer before Stanford began as more of an ode to what I'd been doing for most of my 20s. I just wanted to get it all out, sort of the stories, the experiences, the research, the conversations that I'd had. And it's really involved more into me wanting to just give the takeaways from living a long-term nomadic sort of lifestyle, and also how I predict that remote work can change and shift the world in the future as it continues to grow. It's exciting, it's fun. I've always wanted to write books. I thought it'd be sci-fi. I thought it'd be fiction. Hopefully that will be the next chapter, but right now this is the type of book that called to me.
It's so interesting. So it's like an autobiography, basically.
I would say, maybe memoir in a way, mixed with research and conversations and interviews and studies. Mm-hmm. I may say I was in Kenya talking to anti-poachers who shoot the poachers that they see trying to kill rhinos. And through them, I learned about what the future of some of East Africa might look like in terms of remote work. because those anti-poachers in their free time were picking up remote jobs online that helped them supplement income to support their families. So sort of my own personal experiences mixed with some interviews and conversations on the road. And then I'll tie it in with larger themes about how these things are evolving and empirical research I've seen as well on remote work.
We're going to go back and talk more about your nomadic journey because that is so fascinating. But before we go there, what has it been like being an author?
It's been fun. It's a lot of work. Just kind of vomiting out the first 400 page or whatever draft that feels horrible when you're doing it, but then you look back and you're kind of okay with it is a fun journey. The real work, though, I believe, is in the rewriting, the shaping, and that is sort of the hard, important stuff that you need to do to make sure that it really shines and that it polishes up well. And then, of course, in that, I want to make sure I'm writing something that people listening, that friends, that other people might want to read, that might be inspired by, that might help them motivate to do lifestyle like I did. And even if they don't, to just consider it and understand it and advocate for it if it makes sense for people they know.
Do you dedicate time every day to writing a small portion of it, or is it more just like time blocked on the weekends when you don't have class or anything going on that you focus on it?
So I was fortunate enough, like I said, to sort of bang this all out in the summer before school began. So the first draft, every day I'd spend at least 3 or 4 hours writing, 1,000 to 2,000 words per day. Now it's a lot of rewriting, which is more weekends, Wednesdays when we don't have classes. It's a very busy schedule here at the GSB, my friends.
In between golf and skiing weekends.
Skiing, in between theme birthday parties and masquerades. I try to get the book stuff in, but it's been a lot of fun. It's been a really good journey, and it'll be some time before the book comes out, but I'm really excited to be doing this project.
Amazing. And I'm absolutely fascinated by your nomadic journeys. I had a journey of my own.
Of course.
During COVID. However, you've been doing it for so many more, 6 years, way before it was a hot thing to do, during the pandemic, after the pandemic. So you've really been pushing remote work for a very long time.
Yeah.
What were some of the most amazing / crazy places that you've worked from on your nomadic journey?
Oh man, lots. I've been about 60 countries in the last few years. I've worked in Chernobyl, wearing a gas mask and everything, had to take some calls from there. I did some stuff from the top of Mount Kilimanjaro after a week-long climb. We were setting up a nonprofit at Galactic Fed. This was right when the Ukraine-Russia war broke out. We were helping get refugees from Ukraine to Russia. So I set up a division that would help Galactic Fed employees in Romania take care of Ukrainian refugees coming over. So I had to do some calls there from Kili. I did a safari for 3 weeks, working every day from that. Burning Man. I've done work for Moscow, in the Kremlin. Probably the most interesting of all was this month and a half, 2 month long trek that my co-founder and I did to the Congo. So we wanted to go somewhere unique, off the beaten path that not many friends had been to. And we went to the Congo. It was a whole process to get the visa. We basically had to assure the ambassador that we'd carry a bag there for his son. It was a whole thing. And when we got there, we asked around. We discovered the most remote lake in the world is in the Congo. It's called Lac Tele. It's formed in a rainforest the size of Greece when a meteorite hit in the middle of it millions of years ago and formed a perfectly round lake. And hardly anyone, especially any outsiders, have been there. I think maybe just like a dozen or so in the last 20 years. A couple of scientific expeditions in particular, because they believe there's this dinosaur creature called the Mokele Mobembe that lives around this lake and kills everyone who enters there. So anyways, long story short, my co-founder and I did a trek up the Congo River into this lake. It took us a long time. I lost 20 pounds. We had to hire a militia with AK-47s and spears who accompanied us. I met the most incredible people I've ever met in my life. So kind, so hospitable, let us staying in their villages, hosting us, teaching us about their ways of life. That was probably my favorite off-the-grid travel work experience. I wasn't working the whole time there. I did as much as I could, though, to keep the team in touch. So yeah, those are a few fun places I've worked.
How do you balance work with these amazing life adventures? Like, when you say work, do you mean like you're taking a call, you're on your laptop? Do they have reception on the top of Kilimanjaro? Like, how would you define work in this sense?
You'd be amazed at where local SIMs can reach nowadays as far as data. So a lot of this is working on my computer, hotspotting off my phone. And you can do that pretty much anywhere, especially if you have solar-powered chargers. A lot of work on my phone when needed, especially the call stuff, Slack stuff, the normal stuff that can be done, just communication with the team. At the size my company's at now, I do less of like talking to clients and direct marketing type work. I more run a management team, head of HR, head of marketing, head of sales, head of the different product divisions. So it's really answering questions at this stage, helping guide the vision for what they do, and that sort of stuff is a lot more communication. So yeah, it's a balance. Like, I think as any successful remote worker will agree, digital nomads in particular, the work always has to come first. So I would never go on one of these grand adventures if I wasn't absolutely clear that everything was buttoned up from a work perspective, and that if it wasn't, that I had a very clear way to do work while I was doing that adventure. Because I've seen lots of friends who try this lifestyle. I did a program called Remote Year, for example, and a couple of my buddies on that just did not prioritize work. They went in, they did the absolute minimum, they got fired. That's uncommon, I would say. And it really just comes from treating your job like you would in a normal job. It's the most important thing you do. Mm-hmm. And that's especially true for my work at Galactic Fed. It's the best thing I've ever built.
It sounds like you have to be extremely disciplined in order to make remote work in the way that you did and have your company be as successful as it is.
Definitely, yeah. I think also a lot of people, maybe some people listening here, saw during COVID that you had to go remote all of a sudden, and your company had never done this before. And we're figuring out, man, what does remote work look like now? And I did a lot of sort of help with friends that were trying to transition their company, giving advice and that sort of stuff during this time. And what I really concluded during this is that, sure, some companies can convert from not remote to remote. It's happened and it can work well. But I think that the absolute best remote companies I've seen were remote from the very beginning. At Galactic Fed, everything we do is remote in our DNA, from the way we hire people, to the way we onboard them, to the way we communicate with clients, to the way we communicate internally with our tools. The way that we even set up our interview process is entirely focused on, discerning if people have the drive and the gumption and, the care to really be able to get things done in an autonomous way remotely. And then we also have systems set up that track their progress over time and their hours and what they're working on to make sure they do that. And so when you join our company, you're going to be remote. Now, I find it might be tough if the contract, the agreement, the social fabric of what you said you wanted to do was not remote, and then all of a sudden it is, or maybe even hybrid. That can be tough for some people who like that in-person environment.
It's like expectation going in, and are you going to be remote all the time, or is there like an end in sight of like when you go back to the workplace? But for Galactic Fed, it's like we're remote first, and we're always going to be remote. Exactly.
And so actually during COVID, we lost 40% of revenue in 2 weeks. It was insane. I mean, the whole world shut down, right? But then within a few months, it just went right up because marketing was in demand then. Again, we help companies run their marketing, and people were doing marketing online more than in person. But also, we just didn't fire anybody. We were able to scale back up because we were remote, and we weren't flailing to figure out this new paradigm. It was something that we were incredibly used to and in fact could rely on. I think it's very flexible, adaptable, and also allows people who come from all different walks of life to contribute better, who might not be sized up and viewed the same way in a workplace if they're in person.
Totally.
If you can't tell, I freaking love remote work. So.
And that's also what your TEDx is going to be about.
Yeah, so mine, Cherie told you hers is about anybody can be an influencer. Mine is called The Next Billion Nomads. A bit provocative title, but basically what I'm talking about is how I view over the next decades, 100 years, who knows, remote work will become much more of a part of the fabric of our reality. And how will that change the world? How will that allow people from developing nations to, rise out of poverty, to flatten national boundaries to move where they want? How will this change the divide of rural versus urban communities? Will you really need to leave your hometown anymore to get that high-paying job in New York City or whatever it may be? And I've done hundreds of interviews with people on the road over the last 6 or so years, from the Vatican to the Kremlin to the Congo, asking people what they view the future of remote work will look like. And that's what I'm excited to talk about.
I love it. And also just knowing you as like a human, a person, a friend, like it's so interesting because your book, your life experiences, your book and your TEDx is just so on brand. And like that, I don't mean that to sound like bad, like mine's on brand for me. Yours is on, like, this is what we care about and what we feel so passionately about that like we could deliver an 12 to 18 minute impassioned speech about.
Yeah. I think it's so cool, like being at the GSB here where, people are just so polarized on certain things. Not everybody, and it's okay if you're not. But you get to meet people who really, really care a lot about one thing or two things, like how anybody can be an influencer, this like weird niche remote work nomading thing that I care a lot about. And I find those people are the most interesting in life when they just like, their eyes go crazy about one thing. Yeah. And if you don't know what that is for you yet, maybe you just haven't found it. Yeah. So. It's
exciting. Okay. The Congo, Kilimanjaro, safaris, those are incredible places to work remotely. What is the most boring place that you've worked remotely?
Oh, man. One time I was on a road trip in Iceland with my brother, which is a great place to work. But our car broke down in the middle of the road, and this was like right when I was starting Galactic Fed. I was still doing like client-facing stuff, and I had some really pressing things to get done. And the only outlet that we could find within miles was inside of a busy outhouse bathroom. So I sat on the floor of this essentially like high-tier porta potty, like cross-legged on the ground, just working on my laptop for about 8 hours as people came in and out doing their business. There's a lot of not very glamorous aspects like that in the lifestyle. A lot of sitting in airport terminals, working. Some people may view it boring, but I love working when I'm back in my parents' house. But that can be boring for people if they have to do that. But yeah, I mean, when you're working remotely, as many of you may know, if you traveled, at the end of the day, a lot of it's not the glamorous trips most of the time. If you're really prioritizing work, you're just sitting at a desk in your Airbnb, like getting stuff done. And that's how it should be, really, if you care.
Is that story about the outhouse going to be in your TED Talk?
Honestly, that's like a recessed memory I just pulled out. So maybe.
It could be fun to show the spectrum.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Remotely. Yeah. And I think it's a very real part of the experience. Like sitting in the airports looking for a plug. Like we've all been there. Yeah. We haven't all been to an outhouse looking for a plug, but right. That's disgusting.
Yeah, it was pretty gross and very muddy and just a memory I don't want to revisit.
We don't have to go back there right now. Yeah. So going back to Galactic Fed, tell me more about the company, why you started it, and why did you want to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I have always wanted to do my own thing, whether it was always writing books, and I hope to keep doing that. But I just really didn't like the idea of sitting in one chair all day, listening to what someone tells me and having to work a normal job. I just really chafed under that, honestly. And I'd say it really started when I was young. Actually, I brought show and tell, this little piece of art that I made when I was in second grade. For those who are watching on Spotify or Apple or wherever, basically this is a small depiction I wrote that says, "My dream is to invent things." And it shows scientists running really fast, holding a beaker. And this is like one of my most prized possessions in the world, because I think it's nice looking back and knowing that you have had a feeling that you have now for a long time. Because I think that we all are constantly rewriting our past. And it's nice to be able to look back and be like, wow, like I've always been that guy, that little kid who wanted to do his own thing, to create, to invent, and to build new things. And yeah, it's fun. I'm proud of that piece of art.
And how old were you when you created this?
I was in second grade, third grade, something like that. My mom rediscovered it and framed it and gave it to me for Christmas a few years ago. And I was like, that is going with me everywhere, especially to Stanford, which is a place of dreamers and doers and people trying to do things. So actually when I met KG, who you interviewed, who's my girlfriend, we met at Stanford a year and a half ago. We were in the same cabin in Tahoe. And this was one of the first things I showed her when we met, because I was still unpacking and setting up my dorm and stuff like that. And I think that she was really touched to see that.
That's when she fell in love.
But yeah, so anyways, to answer your question more, that's the original inspiration. I wanted to do my own thing. Even in college, I started my first company, didn't work out, kept that spirit. And yeah, talking more about inspiration for Galactic Fed. Again, we help companies run their marketing, their Google ads, Facebook ads, build websites, search engine optimization, that sort of stuff. It started because I was getting hit up a lot when I worked at one company before to run people's marketing campaigns for them. They'd say, I'll pay you $5,000 a month to spend 5 hours a month running this stuff for me. I'm like, wow, that could really add up. And so I left that company I was at. I picked up a few clients from there. I was fortunate to have already built up a bit of a name in this marketing space from helping that business and for working at Google and such. And then I think something that my co-founder and I did different from the start. My co-founder also worked with me at that previous business. She was a physicist at CERN in the Large Hadron Collider before she dropped out of that and began marketing. So we brought this sort of scientific programming background to what we did. And at the time, much more of like the marketing agency focus was on creative and brand and cleverness and that sort of stuff. And we were like, we're never going to outcompete the Mad Men style people. But what we can focus on is data and growth and tracking and just really giving a lot of effort towards that. So we hired PhD mathematicians, we hired scientists, we hired former biologists, and trained those sorts of people to be marketers for us. And I think that's what led us to get a sort of name in Silicon Valley and to work with lots of different high growth startups, which has made a name for us. And yeah, I didn't think the company would grow this much, this fast. As I said, we have about 170 team members around the world. I read two really great books early on. One was called The E-Myth. The other is called Built to Sell. And I am not a business book guy. Like, I know people at business school are like, I read like 50 nonfiction books a year. I probably read like 90% fiction. So there's only a few business books I've read. But these two books really gave me a good insight into how important it is to, from the moment you start something, you need to be thinking really big and making sure that you're always removing yourself from processes when you can. At first, I was like, I hired people to like talk to the clients because I was like, oh, I don't want to keep talking to the clients. They're taking up too much of my time. And then I was like, oh, doing the sales is taking up too much of my time. I need to hire salespeople. And before we knew that, I was moving and hiring HR people and finance people and things like that. Whereas I found that a lot of the competitors in my space and stuff really they just like love having their like personal brand associated with their agency, with their brand, and they're like, I need to be like Zach Boyette, Mr. Marketing Guy, who's out there like flying around talking to clients. And I was like, I just want to like write books and chill and like have a good time with my friends. I just kept scaling it with that sort of mindset that I need to remove myself from processes so I can focus on the next most important thing. And I think that's been really good for us.
And Galactic Fed has been wildly successful over the past couple of years. You have had this success and many others before coming to business school. I think a lot of people who are applying to MBA programs hope to be in your shoes, and you're already there. So what was the decision of getting an MBA?
Yeah, so for me, it was a bit like non-traditional. I've been doing this lifestyle for 6 years, and don't get me wrong, it's a lot of fun, and I want to keep doing it, but it does get a bit lonely at times, especially if you don't have a partner that you're traveling with. And I was also like, wow, like my brain is in like so many different places. I started thinking in terms of places instead of time. I would say, remember back in Cartagena, remember when we were in Tanzania, not like remember June or May or something like that. And I decided at some point that the most radical thing I could do to grow was just to like be in one place for a change. And so I was like, okay, I could like move to New York and do that whole thing. I have a bunch of friends there. I can move to a nomad hub like Bali, Chiang Mai, Lisbon, Cape Town, or I could go to grad school. So I thought about doing comparative literature or something Englishy like that because it just seemed fun. Then I was like, I should probably get an MBA. I'd run a company. So yeah, I was like, Stanford seems like it. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to meet other entrepreneurs. This seems like the place. And the more I started looking into grad school, I was like, wow, like this is something that can really change your life, even for someone who's already an entrepreneur such as myself. Like, in being here, that's been confirmed a million times over. There are people here like so much more impressive than me or anyone I've ever met. People who are Olympic athletes, people who have created large companies, people who have just really made a name for themselves in certain industries, such as Cherie, in like so many ways I never imagined. And I feel so much more inspired being here than I was before. I felt like I was almost in a rut, and this place is like nirvana for entrepreneurs. I feel like I wake up every day and I'm just surrounded by people trying to change the world, and that's really inspiring.
Are you in touchy-feely?
I am doing touchy-feely this quarter.
Well, something we talk about is the here and now and being present versus like the later in the future or in the past. So it sounds like in the here and now, like you feel a lot of awe, wonder, inspiration. What is something that you think you will take away from this experience after we graduate in 6 months? And that can be something that we're learning in class or outside of class, but like, is there a takeaway that you will hold on to?
A few things, yeah. I'd say one of them is that the people you meet will inspire you to do new things. And that seems obvious, but when you are just spending your time on the internet looking for inspiration or being in this sort of similar environment that you've been in, you're never really going to grow, you're never really going to change. And it almost takes a forcing mechanism of putting yourself in a place with tons of people who are trying to build wildly different things or set their lives in wildly different directions to make you say, maybe that thing I was wanting to do isn't it anymore. I had never thought about being an influencer as you are. I never thought about building an AI education company as one friend is. I never thought about all these different things people can do. And that's sort of like kinetic energy of different ideas bouncing off of each other just really builds a scaffold in your mind that helps you change your ideas and helps you grow.
Something that I didn't expect to take away is how much my horizons have broadened. And it also sounds silly to say because of course there's 100 different industries, but talking to the people who are in real estate tech or in like private equity investing, and even more specific than that, it's like climate private equity. Like there's just so many niches upon niches that like I sort of knew existed, but until we talk to the people who are just so passionate about that space, you're like, oh, I finally get it. And not that I'm going to go into those spaces, but I think just my horizons have broadened and my like brain is like bigger because of it, or there's like there's more grooves in my brain because I know that this field exists and I have like a little bit more background, whether I'm learning in the classroom or from our classmates about like what exactly they're doing.
Yeah, I completely agree. And to me, the coolest part about this too is right now we are all on the same trailhead and we're getting our gear on, we're putting on our backpacks and such. And in 5 months, we're about to start walking on our own trails. And some of our trails will intersect again, and some of them will go wildly different ways. And I think that as the years go on, it will be incredible to see how far each of us has walked in a completely different direction. And I think that it's going to be amazing.
Next, we're going to transition to talk a little bit more about your MBA experience. What has been your favorite class so far?
So for me, I find that you can have the coolest title of a class, or conversely, the lamest, like most boring sounding class ever. And what really makes the difference is who's teaching it. So right now, I'm in a class taught by Condoleezza Rice, the former Secretary of State. It's called Global Futures State. It talks about statecraft. How do you build a nation? So that's an incredible class. But really, I'm pretty like politically minded and like thinking about these things. Another class, a teacher that I really love is Keith Hennessy. I've taken 2 of his classes. One was about the U.S.-China relationship. So we learned all about what the U.S.-China cooperation versus competition has been. Taiwan, will China invade or not? We had a woman in charge of wargaming the situation for the United States. If China invades Taiwan, what does the U.S. do? our professor was able to invite that woman in who came and told us that I could go, say, to Taiwan this past summer and not worry about helicopters flying over me dropping bombs. She said that she was taking her kids there and wouldn't worry about it until 2027, so that was nice. But that class was really interesting. I also took another class with the same professor, Keith Hennessy, about fiscal policy. That sounds like so boring, I could see, but he taught in a way where you just really understand where we're going as a nation in terms of what we're spending and what we're getting out of it and what the future could look like in terms of the deficit and debt. And it really opened my eyes and opened my aperture to the fact that that is something we need to consider almost on par with the climate crisis, is where is our spending going? How do we deal with it? So these are like the least businessy classes ever. I'm in touchy-feely as well. I'm in managing growing enterprises, which is another famous class. But I like ones that kind of hit you on the head and you're like, I didn't expect that this would inspire me to do something different, but it has.
I love that answer. It's also like the classes that have inspired you and also maybe giving you the most takeaways are not the ones where we're crunching numbers or learning like a quote unquote hard skill in Excel.
Oh no, those are the worst classes. I mean, I'm good at math, but yeah, I think we're grown up now. We're out of undergrad at this point. The stuff that you'll keep with you is not how to build a model. It's the simple verbal models. It's the frameworks in your mind. It's the ideas. It's the inspiration. It's someone saying 3 words that you'll remember and you'll take away from a class. Those are the classes that I like to take, and that's why I think the professors matter a lot. I did not like counting. I did not like, the modeling types of classes we took, and I don't remember a single thing we did with them now. But I do remember the more touchy-feely type classes we've done.
Sure. It's a verbal model.
It's a verbal model.
For someone who's applying to business school right now, perhaps thinking about it from your background, what is some advice that you would give them?
I'm sure everyone says start early, and I would agree. I think that getting the GMAT, get it out of the way is one of the most important steps. And I'm sure you guys have heard that a bunch, so I'll think of things you might not have heard. I would say applying to MBA, especially a school like Stanford that gets thousands of people applying and only has 400 or whatever spots, you really need to stand out. And I remember when the head of admissions, Kirsten Moss, stood up at our welcome admin weekend and told us about a few of the people in the class. And it seemed like what really stuck out to the admissions counselors was not the person who was most important to them is, courage or something like that, and how they stayed up all night and solving that model or whatever the hell. It was the person who what mattered most to them was color, because they grew up not being able to see color at first, or they were partially blind, and then they became a designer, and visual design became very important to them. As the person for most important thing to them was water, because they grew up in a rural area in Africa where their family didn't have access to clean water, and they want to make make a business that will bring water to more people. So I would keep in mind that taking risks sometimes in the way you write your essays can really stand out, provided you're still selling yourself on the good things you've done. Try not to play it safe. I'm a habitual risk taker in general as an entrepreneur, travel guy, all this stuff. So I believe in taking risks maybe more than most people, but I think it really can help you stand out in this process. And you guys have heard enough about how to take the test, when to submit things, so I won't go into that. Just remember that, take a risk on the way you write things and be unique, be memorable.
I mean, in reality, admissions officers only have probably 15 minutes to read your entire application, and that includes many different parts of the application. And so how much time are they spending on the essay? I don't know, but you should definitely look to stand out as they're just picking the paper up and glancing at it.
Exactly. You need to leap off the page.
Yeah.
Don't play it safe.
Don't play it safe. Zach, what is something that you've learned about yourself over the last couple of years, most recently?
I have learned that I have no idea what I'm doing in a given day, and that we're all just making it up as we go.
That's comforting.
Yeah. I think you just got to do your best. I think that I've also learned that the worst decisions I've made in life are ones that I've made out of fear. When I'm like, oh, I'm afraid, if I quit this job to do this new thing, what if I can't get another job like the one I had at Google? What if this new company, Galactic Fed, fails and my friends make fun of me as they did like every day when I said I was quitting that job to start something new? Making decisions out of fear, I've learned, is never good, because at the end of the day, even if you fail, like at least you had a better time and did something more memorable. I've also learned I'm just more playful than I ever imagined and like to take life not very seriously. And I also just think it's really important to be direct with people too. I think that this touchy-feely class at Stanford and some experiences here has taught me even more so that, if you just tell someone the truth and how you feel and be direct with them and honest, even if they don't like what you said, they'll at least appreciate the way you said it. Mm-hmm. So that's another big takeaway I've gotten from Stanford.
On your first point, where it's just like we're all figuring it out, no one really knows what they're doing, that really hits.
Yeah, right?
Like, now that I'm in my late 20s, early 30s, it's like we are now the adults that we like looked up to, or the age that we looked up to when we were kids.
We're like the parents in the Rugrats now.
Right. I'm just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Which is kind of scary, because in some ways I'm just like, I know exactly what I'm doing. And then the other part of me is just like, what is going on? Like, we're still all figuring it out. And I was in a class last quarter where there was an older gentleman who was in the class. And after he had had a really successful career, he was going back to school to learn. And it just signaled to me of just like, oh, if this guy who's like 50, 60 is going, he still has things that he wants to learn.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, we're all just figuring it out.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt a little bit cheated and disillusioned in a way. And I was like, you have, like, what are you still, like, learning? Like, you should have it figured out. But then I imagined myself, like, 10 years ago thinking that about me when I was 28, me when I would be 28. And, like, no one knows what they're doing. And that's freeing, but also, like, so frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you never have it figured out. You're always sort of randomly grabbing at the next best thing. And it looks right in retrospect in the rear view, especially if you have like a kind of a long-term goal and what you want to do, so that at least as you're swimming through the murky mud of life, you can have a light that you're swimming towards, but you're still just paddling in whatever direction feels right and it's easiest.
I agree with that statement, and I think more than ever, if we feel that way and other people feel that way, on the outside they don't show that they're feeling that way.
Yeah.
Which is maybe they can't, maybe we can't.
Yeah.
But like, now that we're talking and having the emperor has no clothes. Like, if everyone feels this way, it's also frustrating that people don't act this way, and I understand that, but I'm like, is it all just an act? Sorry that this has become so philosophical.
No. I think it's cool too, listeners right now are applying to business school and they probably see these profiles that the schools put out and even hear us talk about our most polished stuff that we've done, even what I've said on this podcast. But, we are all putting our best light forward, and it's really easy to give advice to people who are younger and are trying to do a thing you've done. But at the time, you were in that situation and you thought you had no shot. But the most important thing was we had the courage to try. And yeah.
So when we graduate in a short 5 months, I'd love to hear what's next for you. And is there any chance you'll settle down from the nomadic life?
Great question. Short term, hopefully no. So I would love to continue being nomadic, at least while I can. My girlfriend, KG, is also open to being nomadic as well. We'd like to get a few more solid years out of this lifestyle. So I'd love to do, a month or two in New York every year, maybe some time in the Bay, a good amount of time in Europe, and just traveling around the world, going to new and interesting places, continuing to run Galactic Fed, meeting my employees in real life around the world when I can. I view that I want this to be a long-term setup of my life for as long as I can, but as kids enter the picture, as the realities of life, I may need at least some home base. But I think you can kind of challenge this traditional norm that we have to just stick in one place forever and make that where we are. I'm not necessarily sure that I would want to do this, but I do have friends who are nomadic who have their kids on the road with them forever. I remember I met one of the coolest families I met. I was in the Canary Islands, and it was this couple where the husband was Spanish and the wife was Japanese. And they had the cutest little kid who was maybe 6 years old, and he spoke 4 languages already, and they lived on a catamaran, and they traveled around the world full time, homeschooling their kid. And, maybe one day your backyard would be Brooklyn, and then the next it might be Jakarta. But this kid just had the most incredible experiences and the most wild long hair. He looked like something out of Where the Wild Things Are. And I was like, man, can you imagine growing up as an adult, having had that lifestyle? I don't know if you'd be well adjusted or not. Maybe you'd be an absolute psycho, but I think that it's interesting to consider what you can really try. And I think that this sort of traditional paradigm that we've had of 2.5 kids in the suburb, commuting into work, sitting in an office for 8 hours a day, spending more time with your colleagues than you do with your spouse, is something that our generation needs to bust. And we need to build something better for us.
Wow. I'm getting invested in your TED Talk already.
Likewise. And yours.
So Zach, for people who want to chat with you, how can they contact you?
Yeah, so again, I am writing a book and really interested in this sort of lifestyle. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm Zach Boyette. Also, my website is zachboyette.com. You can subscribe for more updates. Also, if you are looking for work in marketing, or if you're trying to find someone to help you run your great marketing campaigns of the future, check out our website at Galactic Fed. We'd love to help you turn your dreams into reality.
Amazing. And we'll have all those links in the description below for this YouTube video. Awesome. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, Cherie. This is great.
We can have fun.
Woo!
Nice. Nailed it. Oh, one more time. There we go. Nailed it.
Nailed it.
Thank you for tuning in to the season finale with Zach Boyette. Before we get to the main takeaways, I would so appreciate it if you could like, comment, and subscribe to Cherie's Corner podcast. Also, if there is someone you can think of who would enjoy or get value of this podcast, please send it over to them. Alrighty, let's get to the takeaways. The first main takeaway from this podcast episode with Zach is the questioning of traditional work paradigms. Especially after COVID, the newer generation might be seeking flexibility through remote work or digital nomad lifestyles. This shift challenges the conventional 9-to-5 workday and office commutes, advocating for a work culture that prioritizes and values autonomy and flexibility. Zach has been doing the nomad thing for over 6 years. It reflects a broader cultural shift of what it means to work and live. The second main takeaway is why Zach wanted to get a business school education. Zach has seen incredible entrepreneurial business success before coming to the GSB. So why did he want a business school degree? It honestly comes down to the power of community and networking. Zach said he got a lot of value from engaging with a really diverse community at Stanford. People with inspiring new ideas and passions, and just being surrounded by people with that energy can catalyze personal growth and innovation even within ourselves. The third and last takeaway of this conversation just acknowledges the fact that no one has it figured out. And I've come to terms with this mindset of continuous learning and just trying and experimenting with new things. I love this conversation topic because it just reminded me that life is about perpetual discovery, where embracing uncertainty and just staying curious can really lead to personal and professional development. I love Zach's energy because it feels like he's just a student of life. Like he seems so eager to learn and grow no matter the path that he finds himself on. Thank you so much for tuning in to season 3 of Cherie's Corner. I'll see you next time. Bye!